Hey there, everybody. Robert Taylor, Williamscape Creations, continuing on with our crafting system with the Narrative Pro plugin. We left off with getting half of the crafting actor component done. We're going to go ahead and get the rest of it completed right now. So now let's create a new function that is called can unlock recipe. I like to make it a question mark. You don't have to, because there are times that I don't. Like right here is recipe unlocked. So I'm actually going to keep things consistent here. Actually, we're going to do this way. There. I prefer the question mark, because can unlock recipe sounds like permission versus a question without the question mark. So now that we have that, first thing we need to do is in the inputs at the plus sign, we need the recipe again. One of the biggest reasons I use functions is because, the get recipe, I can just do that right there and have easy access to it. I don't have a million strings everywhere. So let's go ahead and break this. We're going to break this because we need the research points. And we will get our research points right here. We need to see if the required research points is greater than or equal to the actual research points. We can go ahead and hide these pins. Hit bool. Not hit bool. Hit B and click down for the branch. Do this. We actually need these down here, just like that. If it is not, we will return boolean unlocked. And this will return as false because it wasn't unlocked. Sorry that I change things when we're in video. I tend to find bugs that I haven't run into yet, logic-wise, because I haven't run into that situation in the game. This needs to just be a less than. It doesn't need to be less than or equal to, because if it requires 10, I have 10, I want to be able to do it, instead of having to always have more than 10. If this is less than that, then it failed, so don't do anything. If it is, then we need to update research points. We'll go ahead and plug in here. Now this is important. We need to get a multiply because we're not adding more points. In this one instance, we're removing them. So we want to turn this into a negative. There we go. It will now, instead of adding the amount of points, it will add a negative of those amount of points, which will simply subtract it. We will then get recipe. We'll do find recipe. And then update crafting categories. And then return is now unlocked. Perfect. Next one is just a nice little thing. Not enough research points. Drag out of here. Show narrative HUD notification. not enough research. Wow. Points. That's all this one is. Now we're going to check the inventory because we want to make sure we have everything we need. So let's go ahead and, come on, there we go. Check inventory. And we will need, yes. Oh no. Craftable item. BP recipe data asset. Has required items. Make this a boolean. Let's go ahead and disconnect that. Now from here, we will get the crafting requirements. Do a for each loop. Thank goodness for pause. I really didn't want you to hear that obnoxiously loud sneeze of mine. All right. So next thing we need to do is out of here, we need to break. And we also need to get our inventory reference. Search for has item. As a note for right now, this is just a simple bool. And what I mean by that is, despite the fact that quantity is right here, it's not made yet. That's a to do at the moment. So ignore the quantity if you use this for now. I hope that they fix that in the next update, but if they don't, they don't. I'll obviously be testing it and letting you guys know if they do, because it simplifies the code. You obviously want to branch. And if it's false, we want to return. As required items will be like that. Now, obviously, if it completes, we'll go ahead and put that right here. Check mark that. The next thing we want to do is, if it's true, we want to get our inventory here. Let's just put it down here. And we'll do find item by class. Which is, yes, right here. And we're going to now get quantity. See why it's a little bit frustrating here. And we will get this quantity right here. Let's do an equals. Just like that. So I'm having to do a double verification here, which can be annoying. I know I could do or right here, and I honestly probably should, but that's something I'll change in the future. I don't want to do that live. And we will come here, pull down the B, and if false, return node, because we don't have the required item, or we don't have enough of the required item. This one checks if we have the item. This one checks if we have enough of the item. So honestly, this may have to stay the same. Because there may be times that we don't have the item, and we don't want there to be an access none. So I think I actually did this correctly. Then if completed, if the whole loop completes, then we know we have all of the items that are required. So check inventory is now complete. Now we do can craft. Can craft, question mark. Inputs. BP crap. Yeah. BP recipe data asset. Item to craft. We're going to do an is valid check. This should never not be valid when the game has been created. But until that's the case, we want to have these checks. So, craft item, I create a print screen if it's not valid to let us know that where it wasn't valid and what wasn't valid. Because then we're also going to get the inventory, do a validated get, and do the exact same thing here. If it's not valid, it'll let us know and it'll tell us that it's not valid. We're going to check inventory. Get item to craft. Hold down the B. If it's false, show narrative HUD notification. Missing items to craft. And if we can craft, we now need to actually craft. So I did this one out of order. We should have done craft before can craft. So let's go ahead and create the craft item. I like to try to keep things in an orderly fashion so that it makes more sense to you guys as we make it. So I do apologize. So this one, for the input, it'll be the same thing. Item to craft. First thing we're going to do, not break, silly me. Crafting requirements for each loop. Now we will break. Get our inventory component again. Find item by class. Plug that in right there. Then we will also need consume item. Now, I have been told in a future update that we will be able to use remove item. Right now, if we remove item, it's going to remove all of them. We need to just remove the quantity right now. Now, the reason we would want to use remove item is because it saves us an additional call. And what I mean by that is when you consume item, it's going to check to see if there's functionality for the consume function of the item. So it's wasting some logical power to then call for a function that's not actually being called. We're just destroying the item. We're destroying the material because we don't need it anymore. So with that being said, do keep that in mind. That remove item will be getting the functionality of having a quantity. Whoa, I didn't want that. I just wanted to remove that. Wow. Anyways, just keep that in mind. It's very important to remember. And we're going to consume the items because if we get to craft, we know we have all the items. We know that we have enough of the items. So at this point, we don't need to check the logic to make sure we have the items again, because we've done all the work we've needed to keep everything in a closed loop and with a single access. The next thing we need to do is once we've consumed everything that's in the requirements or removed, depending on which version you get in the future, we want to get our inventory reference again and try add item from class. At which point we will break out of here, crafted item. No, not craft item. Crafted item. We're going to get our crafted item. Place that in here. This is one of the few instances where you don't need to asynchronously load it in. It just works. And we're going to get the item. It's going to give us one of the item. Excuse me. Then we're going to create something that we've never created here on our channel, and you may have never ever created one. We're going to create an event dispatcher because we need to call an event to happen. That way it updates information on the widget for us. Trust me, I've tried it every other way and it's never worked. It would update it if I closed it and then reopened it, but it wouldn't update it dynamically. So let's create an event dispatcher, and I'm going to name it on crafted. Now, if we come up here to the right, we can hit this plus sign, and we want it to be item to craft, just like everything else was. We want it to be that recipe. Now we're going to go ahead and get on crafted, and we're going to call it. And we're going to get item to craft. Lastly, we want a notification. I'm going to change the order of operations for this because it doesn't matter as long as this gets called. We're going to break out the result because we want to get the item class, to which we want to get the class defaults. We want to show narrative HUD notification. Excuse me. We're going to format text. Curly bracket, item, close curly bracket, space, created. We hit enter. I can now get the display name, place it right in there. I can hide the unpinned things. And now, the system will also let us know that the item has successfully been created. It'll give us a little notification. Now then, we are almost done. We've done all of the functions. We now need to do a couple of events and connect it to the same actor of the crafting component. Now for us, no matter what, we are going to be referencing the player, the player's recipes. You only want one location of the recipes that the player has access to. So obviously for us, that means player state. So we'll make sure that we attach this to the player state. And if this project doesn't have a custom player state, we'll make one real quick. So now that we've done that, let's go back to the event graph to create a couple of functions. No, not functions, events. Sorry. The first one we want is custom event load recipe data. This is the thing that the widgets will access to get access to everything that they need. So we're gonna create an input. We're gonna make it of type S recipe. Instead of the data asset, we want the struct. First thing we're going to check is recipe locked. Oh, perfect. This needs to be pure. On the B for a branch. And then if false, can unlock recipe. We will check this right here. I just realized something here. I think we do that already. No, we don't. Perfect. Then we're going to hold down a B for a branch again. Because if it can't unlock, we don't want to do anything. Sorry, let me clean this up a bit for my own sanity here. Not W, Q, there we go. If it can unlock, we need to asynchronously load. Now we've gone over this in other series, but there may and most likely are people who have not. So I will go ahead and explain this one last time. Future episodes, I won't be explaining this again. So you're going to run into situations where you're soft referencing and you need to load the information in. So you have two options, asynchronously load and load asset blocking. And 99.99999% of the time, you want to asynchronously load. What this does is it waits for the next frame to load it in so you don't run into any hitches, so that the game doesn't pause or slow down or stop. Load asset blocking, which is probably used more often based off of games that I've played that people have made using Unreal Engine, and there being freezes and stutters. They probably use this when they shouldn't. This is safe to use for very, very tiny things that hold very little data. But it's still preferable to not use if you can, because you can't guarantee that there won't be a hitch that the player will notice. So now we're going to asynchronously load it. If this is true, whoops. And if this is true, let's go ahead and clean this up a bit. There we go. Now, if it's loaded, we're going to get crafting data asset that we set up at the beginning of the last episode. Now, this isn't strictly needed. If you know for a fact you are never going to actually access this data asset ever outside of the crafting component or any component, whatever the situation may be, you can, even if it's not an asset, any actor, anything whatsoever, you can actually just drag out of here, resolve soft reference, and do the work then. And I'll show you what I mean right here. Because at this point, we're now going to get the can craft function and plug this in. Now, if you check, we can actually do it here as well. So it's whichever works best for you. Because I don't like running into issues down the road, I went ahead and just took the extra step. It's really up to you. It's an extra node no matter what. And at that point, we now need to just connect everything properly. The first thing we want to do is we need to add an interface to the crafting component, and it's the narrative savable component. And that's because we need to call something event load. And the reason we need to do that is whenever we load the game back in, so we've ended the game, we've ended the session, we come back the next day to play the game, we need to load the view models information correctly. So we will do not set broadcast, research points to our research points. Perfect. The next thing we need to do is we actually need to create our own player state. So I'm going to pause it real quick because that's not what this episode is about. I've done that in other series before. One moment. Okay. So again, the reason we need the player state is because we need the inventory component. Excuse me. We need that all set up. Real quick, before my brain forgets, I want to make sure that we've done it for crafting categories. We have it set to save game for research points. Check mark that for save game. We need these saved. The rest of them doesn't matter, that it's going to redo this every new game. Save that. Let's go back to our player state. So let's add our crafting component here so we have access to it. We want to right click on begin play, add call to parent function, because we want everything from the BP narrative player state to still do its thing. It's important that we make sure we do that. Now we're going to come here to crafting, get inventory component, not get inventory, get the component. So we can then grab the actual inventory component. We'll get that and place that in there. The next thing we want to do is at this point, excuse me, create a custom event. Strictly speaking, you don't need this. I need this to be a custom event, but it's how I have it. And it needs to you need to make sure that this happens after we get the view model, and definitely after the parent begin play. We want to make sure that inventory is completely compiled. We want to make sure, because if it's completely compiled and ready, then that also means that the crafting stuff has already began as well. Which means we can now set up our view model. So if we get our crafting component, first we will, where is it? Yeah, get view model. Oh, I didn't do it correctly. So let's open this up. This needs to be pure. Compile. Go back into the player state. First thing we want to do is set crafting component. So obviously, we're not broadcasting this. Should still work in theory. I may actually try it because I have it checkmarked as broadcasting, but I don't think it's actually needed. We'll be testing it before we're done with the series. Set research points. point. We will get the crafting component again. Research points. There we go. Now you may be wondering why not do this specifically in the crafting. There's a very good reason. I tried. It didn't work. And there's a reason it didn't work. Because if we get a reference to self, which is what we do in most cases, it gives us a self object reference, not the actual crafting component, which we need to plug in right there. It needs to say AC crafting WC. Now, yes, this would still plug in there in the crafting component because it did, but the UMG view models didn't register it correctly. So that's why we do this way. We're going to go ahead and set up view model. So it calls this event for us. And now there's a couple things we need to do because we now have our own player state. You may have already done this. If you haven't, definitely follow along. It's necessary because it's not going to save any information because we're not using the narrative stuff. So the save system just simply isn't working. So let's go ahead and set that up. We need to get the narrative save subsystem. Load single actor. Oops. Unload single. No. Save single actor unload. Wow. And we will get a reference to the self. Just like that. And for save single actor, we need to event and play. We have that set up, and we now need to go into the interfaces because we need to set actor GUID, which we have one. Set static GUID. And we also need to get get actor GUID. And we'll get it. Just like that. Now, whenever we save, it will look for the actor component saved because that's what we did. And everything will work as it should. And we have everything connected, everything interconnected on the BP side. So in the next couple of episodes, we will get the widget working. After we have the widgets all connected and working, we'll then create a few assets, put them in the world, make sure everything works before we end the series. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.